If you're listening to this in the car and you're on your way home,
We'll be in
turn
your
around
house.
because we're in your house.
We're in your house. Welcome to the Horror Junkies podcast, the podcast where we discuss all things horror. I'm your host, Mike.
I'm Pat.
I'm Dylan.
I'm Jorge.
And guys, we're here today with a very special guest. We are interviewing the director from Trench 11, Leo Scherman.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, guys. Hey.
Welcome to the show, Leo.
How's it
Welcome.
going?
Hello.
Thank you.
It's going.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you for taking the time to come on our show. We always get surprised when people are like, "Yeah, we'll come on your podcast."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I should add this up already. But anyway, so Trench 11, for those of you who don't know, World War I style movie, horror movie, takes place towards the end of the war, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember my history correct with that time frame.
Yep. No, you're right. Yeah, it's right at the end. Yeah.
Right at the end. A team of 6 go down, and oh boy, do they have a story to tell if they make it out.
It's so much more than that.
You-
I mean, my God.
I mean, you know the door was locked for a reason, right?
Yeah, for real. So before we get into your movie, Leo, the one thing we always ask on this show, Patrick, take it away.
Top 5 favorite horror movies.
Top 5 favorite horror movies. You know, my thing is that it's like if you say top 3, top 5, or top 10 or top 20, you always feel like you're leaving someone out.
Yeah.
So it's like
So
always
true.
the worst. You know, right? Like it's so, like you could expand or contract, and you're still going to leave someone out. But this is my statement on that. This is not what I think are the top 5 best horror movies. They're my favorites.
Yeah.
Meaning, you know, these are the ones that I can watch over and over and over again. So I would say that my top 5 are, well, I guess chronologically, I might get this one wrong at the very end there. I would say Psycho.
Okay.
Okay.
I
Alfred Hitchcock.
would say Jaws.
Great movie.
Mhm.
Yeah. I would say Jaws. I would say The Exorcist.
Great movie.
Ooh.
I would say Alien.
Okay.
And am I got to 5? No, that's 4. I
That's
would
4.
say
You have one more.
this is where it's bad, but yeah, this is the toughest sort of. There's another one I want to say, but I'm going to say The Shining because at the end of the day,
Of course.
I own a Shining poster, and I watch it all the time.
I
and
keep
it
a
has
copy of
you know,
The Shining in my trunk at all times, just in case I'm somewhere and someone's like, I haven't seen it. I'm like, you have a spare 3 hours?
That's right.
4 if you
Yeah.
want to do bonus features.
Yeah,
like that movie is unapologetically should be in everybody's top 5 in my opinion, just because of
I think
all it
so,
did.
you
I
know,
mean-
but I've heard people argue though, and I think somewhat fairly that it's not necessarily that scary. I just find it so entertaining.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I
it's
mean?
extremely
Like it's like The Exorcist. Like The Exorcist really scares me. Or to be honest, like so the 2 that I didn't name on there were The Thing and Silence of the Lambs.
Mm.
Of course.
And those movies actually really they actually arguably scare me more. But
Yeah, of course.
I want to watch The Shining all the time. I always want to watch The Shining. It's
Well,
weird.
it's just got it
I don't
was
know.
filmed beautifully. That soundtrack to it is fucking awesome.
So much of that movie was so groundbreaking, directorial wise
Yeah.
and cinematography wise. Not to mention the score for the movie. I mean, they made a lot of the instruments
Yeah.
to make those sounds. That opening score and opening shot for The Shining is one of the most unsettling and creepy openings to a movie that just gets you right smack in the mood for what you're about to watch.
Yeah.
I agree.
It's so fucking. I couldn't agree more. It's just the whole, just the opening credits that helicopter shot of the VW Beetle,
Oh.
it's just like, what is going on?
And then
like,
it's
who
just-
made this and why? Like, what's happening? It's so weird.
And then it's just a
Everything about it is so weird.
And then it's just a wide-eyed, terrified Shelley Duvall for like another 2.5 hours.
Oh god,
Just being yelled at.
this fucking true.
Just berated.
But I do think there are so many other films that I find personally, I actually think, honestly, I think The Silence of the Lambs scares me more. I think that I know The Thing does. I would argue that Halloween, there's so many movies that I find more actually frightening, but the ones that I listed there are they're just the movies that I can watch the most.
Yeah,
right.
And I have done.
Yeah.
And it's like you can be hungover on a rainy Sunday
Oh,
and just, it's like, I've seen it 28 times in the last 10 years. Is it worth seeing again? Hit it. You just go.
Exactly.
you just painted the typical Sunday for me.
Yeah.
A rainy hungover Sunday.
It's literally, what do you
Like,
do?
watch The Shining again.
Throwing up, peach rings in hand.
Peach rings.
And I guess another good question, because that's a fucking fantastic list, and I'm gonna go ahead and on a limb here and say most of the movies you just mentioned are in some shape or way are on our top 5.
Yeah.
I have a Xenomorph tattoo.
Yeah.
I fucking love
literally.
it, man.
But more importantly, man,
anyone just had anyone out of curiosity on that list that's not, that you guys don't have on your list?
No, I mean, I know The Shining and
Shining
Alien?
Alien is
Alien is on
definitely
my list.
on the list.
Yeah.
I would say everything in your top 5 at least makes my top 10 for sure.
Yeah,
exactly.
definitely.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those are.
Yeah.
Or
Like-
at least rotates out, because that list changes so often when you rewatch something or you just find something new.
Doesn't
and,
it? I
Yeah.
know.
Right.
That's the thing.
It's never the
honestly.
same.
I
Yeah,
know.
it's a never-ending question that'll be different tomorrow.
Yeah, that's true.
I know. I totally agree.
So Leo, what got you into filmmaking? Like, was there a movie that you watched? Was it just something that you've always had a passion for? Like, what really got you into wanting to make a movie?
I feel like it was maybe a two-step thing, and probably the first stage was just being young, really when I was very young, and just I'm definitely a product of Spielberg, and I guess George Lucas. I came of age through the '80s, and I just Star Wars, but really quite like Star Wars and E.T. and Raiders and Jaws. Jaws was and so I think that those things, but when I think about that stuff, I think, yeah, but who the fuck wasn't really ultimately? If you're of a certain age, that was the shit, right?
Yeah,
that
exactly.
was what it was.
Oh no.
And I think everybody, even if you're not of that age, even if you're younger or older,
Yeah.
we're talking about such an influential period for cinema. So I realized that it's sort of, I mean, my version of it is that it's that, but then it's that. The first movie that I saw that I realized that I thought directing was I kind of was more aware of what directing actually was Goodfellas.
Nice.
And that was, and I saw the year that came out, I was, I remember seeing it. It was actually, oddly enough, it was Color of Money as well, but I didn't know that until I kind of, I reverse engineered that, and that's definitely not it's definitely not on everybody's list of Scorsese movies, but I still own the Blu-ray, and I've seen it 50 times, and I watched it a lot when I was a kid, but I didn't know who he was then. I just knew I loved the movie. But then when I saw Goodfellas, that was the first time I went, well, hold on, who made that? And you know what I mean? I don't know. It had a different kind of. That was, I think, when it just that was. And then I back engineered certain things and kind of went, oh shit, like 6 out of 10 movies that I love were directed by the same guy, Steven Spielberg. So
Yeah.
So you kind of figure it out after. But it was Goodfellas was more when I was I think I was. I don't know what I was. I think I was 15 when I saw that movie for the first time. And I just was like, oh my God, this thing is, it just was I don't know. That was when it shifted from just loving movies to thinking, who did this and how can I do that?
Exactly. Yeah. That's cool. Cause I mean, none of us here really are the directorial type. I don't think. I mean, I filmed my own short movie for a class.
I want to be a director.
And that's buried because it was for a grade and it was pretty bad. and half the guys that are in this room were in that short movie. And it's a lot of work, man. Like when I was like, oh man, I know it's hard, but I mean, it can't be that bad. And boy, was I in for a surprise when we showed up to that night to shoot, and I was like on anxiety over the fucking roof, trying to figure out like, oh my god, is this working? Is this gonna look good? And yeah, I applaud you guys, man. That's crazy. It takes a lot of work, and to really get into that film world and dive into that.
Well,
madness.
it's also trying to get a team of people that have the same vision as you and stuff
Exactly.
like that, and trying to get people on board.
See, that's the hardest part is getting a team to help you out. Because, like, trust me, there are a lot of YouTube videos that I have on private because I am ashamed of them.
I remember them.
You dark.
Yeah,
YouTube
you know what? I
secrets.
think that the spirit remains regardless.
Oh, yeah.
I was watching Scorsese actually did a valedictorian speech. You can find it on YouTube for NYU a couple of years ago. I just found it really inspiring because he was going on about the fact that he still has nightmares when he's prepping for a shoot, and his nightmares involve him not knowing how to direct.
Yeah.
It's like,
And that's cool. Like
I'm
hearing,
not sure it sort of ever.
And that's cool hearing that from it's Martin
Scorsese.
Scorsese. Come on, like he's one of the guys, and like he's talking to these people like I still get scared
Totally.
when I make a movie.
Yeah. That's like if you hear that from like John
Totally.
Carpenter.
I think the only guy who doesn't is James Cameron. I think he's like
He's confident. He's
No,
like, I'm going
I-
to break a
I-
billion.
yeah. He's just like,
No
I
matter
got
what.
this. Like, he's like, look out.
When you
Like,
sleep on a
move
California
aside.
king full of cash, I'm pretty sure sleeping at night's a little easier. When you got Avatar money just lining the walls of your house, you can
Yeah.
probably like, I can sleep a little bit easier. I know what I'm doing. Titanic, remember that? Like,
Of course you do, because you can't forget it. 'Cause
Well,
everyone
who-
saw it.
Who else has beat their own record, right? Like Titanic is the most successful movie,
Yeah.
and he beat his own record. Like, it's
Yeah,
mental.
that's like
totally insane.
that's like, oh, James Cameron's in the lead, and who's this? Also James Cameron, surpassing him to make the lead.
Exactly.
It's like, that's like who does that?
It's like two Camerons go over the finish line together.
It's like the
It's
best
weird.
dream a
I know.
narcissist could ever have.
Exactly. That's why I don't
Yeah.
think he gets. That's why I don't think he gets scared. He's just like, oh, I got this. It's
I
all
got
good.
this.
Like,
Oh,
But
man.
going off your love for like Spielberg, and you mentioned how Jaws was like in your top 5. If you had the chance to remake a horror movie, which one would it be and why?
interesting question. I can tell you, I know what my answer is, but it's a hypothetical answer.
Okay.
I don't think it would ever happen.
You never
it's
know.
The Vanishing.
Ooh,
You ever
whoa.
seen The Vanishing?
Yeah, that's a good. I enjoy
So
that
why
movie.
it's so weird is that there's the original Vanishing,
Mm.
which is Dutch. It was a Dutch-French movie from, I don't know, 1982 or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 83. And it's incredible. It's one of the scariest movies ever. There's actually no gore at all. It is psychologically the scariest fucking thing you will ever see. It's just terrifying. It's an incredible movie. I revisited it this year, and I was like, I appreciate it even more than I ever had. But the weird thing is that I would just want to remake it, and I would actually pursue remaking it, except for the same director already remade it in
Yeah.
the States
Yeah.
with Jeff Bridges and Kiefer Sutherland and Sandra Bullock, and it's terrible. It's the worst. It's considered one of the worst remakes ever.
It's the
And it
American
was the
remake
same
curse.
director. The American remake curse with
Yeah.
the happy ending, but in this case, it was. What's fucked up about it is that the American remake curse, especially of a Euro guy, is a real thing.
Yeah.
Except that the same guy did it himself. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it's
So
kind
how
of a
did
head
you
trip.
mess that up?
He just ruined his own movie.
Yeah, that's kind of.
Yeah, he fucked his own movie up. He honestly did. And I'm not even joking. Like, the original is so good, and everybody in the world agreed. Like, if it had been a new movie now, it would have, like, a 95% on Metacritic. And it's
Jesus.
just so good. And yet, the remake would be, like, at 20%. Like, everybody universally agrees that the remake is... So that would be the most compelling challenge of the remake.
Yeah.
Because if you could redo the original, I don't know, man. You guys should check that movie out if you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
We'll do an
definitely my
episode.
favorite.
It's a good. I've seen it in one of
Yeah.
my classes, and it's a fantastic movie.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, I took a
Yeah.
film class here at this college I go to, and the professor had a very great taste in movies and played that for everyone. I was like, this is amazing.
I think it could be remade nowadays because it's not about the gore anymore.
It's true.
It is
And
about
also,
the
like,
psyche.
If we can forget about Spider-Man 3, we can forget about the Vanishing remake.
But we haven't forgotten about
Well,
Spider-Man 3.
yeah, and it's funny. It's it's funny you say that because I was with a producer at lunch just the other day, and we were somehow that came up,
Oh God.
and he
Spider-Man
was
3?
mentioning the fact that he was saying how like A Star Is Born.
Yeah.
A Star Is Born is on like its 5th remake, I think, or something crazy, right?
Jesus.
So I don't know, And Scarface, there's another Scarface coming out, isn't there? So that'll be number
Whoa, what?
Huh.
3 or 4.
Isn't there another like?
Isn't there? I thought there was another one.
There could be.
Yeah, there's another one. There's like a Latin like I don't know if it's Mexican, but there's an updated version that is I believe so. That I might be going crazy, but I think it's true.
It's okay. Google someone asked how many
Anyway.
Scarface movies there are. And
Yeah.
I need to answer these questions. How many are there?
I mean, the good thing, too, is that if you do remake Vanishing, the remake was so bad. This is a layup, my friend.
That's
Yeah.
true. That's
You're
true.
gonna look like the
Well,
golden
that's
child.
kind of it, right? And God bless the filmmaker George Sluzy is his name. Just a fucking brilliant director, a Dutchman. But he fucked up his own remake, and he's not. He can't redo it now.
No,
so
he can't.
It feels like you're right. Like I couldn't possibly fuck it up worse than he already did to his own
Exactly.
movie.
He
So I
Steve
think
Jobs.
that-
He Steve Jobs his movie. He did the Apple II, and then he came out with something like
He-
the Newton, or something like right after that. I know he didn't come out with that, but it's like one commercial success, and then just some bullshit right after that. Same thing.
Totally.
But on this podcast, we really, really love themes. So all of September, we pretty much did a whole month dedicated to John Carpenter because we all love John Carpenter. So I guess I'd have to ask
Fucking
you.
A.
I have to ask you, man. What are some of your favorite movies of his? And as a director, what do you really appreciate about what he does with his movies?
Yeah, I fucking love John Carpenter, and I probably my favorite Carpenter movies are. I still think Assault on Precinct is just
Yeah.
so fucking punk rock. It's
Yeah.
so punk rock. It's
Yeah,
like
sure
it's total Ramones of a movie. Like, in fact, I don't know, everything about it is just hardcore. I love it. But my favorites are definitely really like The Thing and Halloween. I mean, those are not hard answers to
Yeah,
give, you
of
know what I mean?
course.
Like those are the classics. Obviously Halloween's pretty hot right now.
Yeah,
With the new one coming out. But The Thing is really, I mean, I think Halloween I saw first, and Halloween was definitely a movie that my dad let me see on Halloween, maybe a tiny bit too young. And it really, really, really scared me. It really scared me, and I actually have rewatched it many times, and I've come to realize, like, especially the first person perspective he takes, like the subjective first person POV.
Yeah.
It's totally actually brilliant, to be honest, because I don't think it was very common. I think there's a movie, a British movie, a really good one called Peeping Tom that Michael Powell made in the 60s. It ruined his career, but I know that
Jesus
Coppola and
Christ.
Scorsese. No, it did. It literally was like considered so. It's about a serial killer, and he films. He has, like, in this case, it's like an old 16mm Bolex, but he films his killings, and they're sexual. Like he's a nasty fucking killer. And
Oh God.
He's a peeping
Michael
Tom.
Powell, and it's called Peeping Tom. And Michael Powell had made these really kind of well-known, more like Oscar bait style dramas, and then he went and made this movie, and they just ran him out of town. Like Britain just shut him down. And Coppola and Scorsese. Actually, Scorsese's editor, Thelma Schumacher, married him when he was an old man. But they all considered Peeping Tom to be one of the great movies. I only bring it up because when I realized when I was watching Halloween, it's just like that's the only other movie after Peeping Tom that I noticed how much that first person POV. We're now much more used to that stuff, especially
Yeah.
because of video games. But that was like really, really unique when Carpenter was even using it.
You should
But
remake it.
but yeah, no, I don't want to fuck the Carpenter.
No, remake it and get Willem Dafoe.
Oh, Peeping Tom. Hey, that's a fucking good idea.
Yes.
Patrick surprisingly sometimes has really good ideas.
idea.
Hollywood.
You know what? That's a really good idea. That's a really good idea too, because you can at least update it because of the technology
Yeah,
shift. Like you
make
can
them
at least offer a different. You can offer a different. You can. It's like a different. That's actually an awesome idea.
Yeah, just
you
have
should
them-
edit
have
this
them-
part out.
Just invite
edit
us
this
to the
part
premiere,
out
man.
so
Just
that
invite us to the premiere.
nobody
That's all we
knows.
care. Just invite us to the premiere. Let's hang out. That's it.
Yeah, Horror Junkies in the credits. That's all we
We'll
have.
just be one long beep for this whole part of the conversation.
Yeah.
I just want to meet Willem Dafoe.
That's a fucking wicked idea, actually. Honestly, it is.
Oh yeah.
It really is. So that was a long way of saying, but the truth is that the Thing is definitely my favorite Carpenter movie, and I think anybody who watches my film Trench 11, it's obvious that I'm heavily influenced /
Yeah.
ripping from the Thing for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Like that movie is fucking, it's epic.
Yeah,
And
not so many people do it
it's
anymore.
fucking incredible.
Yeah, exactly. Can you tell?
Well, talking about remakes, it's so sad that the remake of the Thing was so lame, I thought.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
it was
prequel.
awful.
Oh, the
Yeah.
prequel. Yeah. And how? I mean, it was badly made because of the CGI and stuff like that, but it does line up with the original movie.
Yeah,
Well,
I
if you
mean-
watch the prequel and then watch the original Thing, it kind of answers some questions, but not.
I mean,
it's not good.
You
Does
could
it?
you could just read John Campbell's short story if you want the
Exactly.
answers. It's
Yeah.
like 40 pages. Like if you want
Well,
answers.
if you really want to get all... Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. You go. I was done. Sorry.
I was just going to say, but if you really want to get all fucked up and keep rolling the ball forward, the Thing is a remake too, isn't it?
It
like,
is.
Didn't Howard
It
Hawks
is,
do
yeah.
the first one?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
That's like one of the few good ones.
I would probably say it's the best remake ever.
Ever.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah.
It is. I agree with that.
But for our listeners that
Yeah,
haven't
you
seen,
think? Yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to remakes, The Thing is probably one of the best remakes out there, just because it
And
takes. I lost my train of thought there, but it's black and white, fantastic for the original, but the use of practical effects really sells The Thing, and I think that's what makes it more terrifying is the use of practical effects. Watching the doctor get his hands bitten off by an admin, that's pretty fucking wild. Like,
Yeah, and not to mention the.
Oh
the-
yeah.
the-
When I was prepping my film, when I was trying to think about how to actually make it, I would say The Thing was maybe that and Alien, just because of the way the slow burn works. But really, The Thing was like when I reached out to my effects designer, his name is Francois Dagenet, and that was my reference, was Rob Bottin's work. I just said, hey, like, is there any universe that we can play in the same sandbox as what Rob Bottin achieved for The Thing? And Francois definitely knew, he knew exactly what I was talking about and keyed in on that. Because I think The Thing is totally a masterpiece. I think it's incredible.
Yeah.
definitely.
I think the fucking score, I think the effects, I think the mood. I'm also Canadian, so the whole snow thing is just like right up my alley. Like that whole opener, I'm like, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they filmed it in British Columbia,
you know.
Canada, like the snowfall
They
capital
did.
of North America.
Yeah, it's
That's right. I think on a glacier, I think up there. But
Yeah,
it's
It was filmed. Yeah, the snow outside parts were filmed in Canada, and everything else was filmed on like 6 different lots in L.A.
yeah, and it was like
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
All the interiors.
yeah, the interiors were filmed in like inside studio houses in LA, and they had the fucking like temperature cranked down
Yeah,
to
for,
really
like,
get
40
that cold,
degrees,
to get that cold feeling in there. Because
They did cool it down.
because they didn't have the budget,
Yeah.
I think, to film the interiors there, so they did it in LA instead. It was cheaper.
Yeah, one thing I really love about like Trench 11 and The Thing that I could really compare would be that the sense of paranoia when the shit really starts to hit the fan from start to finish. I mean, The Thing, I rewatched it today for like the 900,000th time, And really, like, when they find out what the fuck's going on, it's nonstop paranoia. You can't trust anyone. And I found that in Trench 11, it's almost it's the same level of isolation, whether you're in Antarctica or hundreds of feet below the ground in the middle of the Argonne forest. where that freaky Englishman said people were coming, but we all knew no one was coming. That tunneler knew exactly what was up. So yeah, I feel like that really the sense of paranoia was really, really palpable and just awesome.
Well, I really appreciate that. I mean, that was certainly by design. I really do worship that thing. I now am completely regretting not including the thing in my top 5, because the truth is, the more I engage and talk about it, I'm just like, it is like, it's such. I just think everything about that movie. I really do think it's a masterpiece. And I you know what's so fascinating too is that I correct me if I'm wrong. You guys sound like you know more, but I don't think it was that well received when it came out. Right?
Yeah, it wasn't at all.
I don't think it was. No.
Thanks to your buddy Spielberg.
And I think it was
thanks to Spielberg. Yeah.
Yeah, it was because of E.T. Is that what the series
Yeah,
was?
no. Apparently, no one wanted to watch an alien assimilate with other dogs and become a horrific gore-fest beast monster. They wanted to see a little alien hanging out with Drew Barrymore.
Hey, you better be careful. Jake is pissed off somewhere right now.
Yeah.
The thing is, too, is like,
you know what,
it came out in the summer.
But that's what I always wonder about those theories, because I have to say, I get that, but it feels really just like, you know what, sometimes good movies come out and they take a little time to get going. And other times, I'm not going to name names, but every year there's about 3 horror movies that come out, and everybody's like, oh my God, it's a fucking masterpiece, and it's fucking incredible. And you know what? You watch it 5 years later, and you're like, I don't give a fuck. And
can you just name one?
Right?
Can you just name one? You got to name one, man. I got to know.
No, I'm not going to go there. But it works both ways. And so every year there's always these movies that are good that kind of just don't land, whether they weren't marketed or they weren't this or they weren't that. So I have heard that theory about E.T. and the thing, but I'm not fully, I don't know. I bet you that there's other factors, and sometimes it's just also, weird luck. Like it just didn't really work out for that moment. That doesn't mean that people didn't, I don't know. I bet you if you got all modern day, Moneyball, that shit, and you were like, well, when did they release it, and what, and all those things, and I'm sure there'd probably be some better answers.
Oh yeah, I didn't definitely.
Because it's not like the '80s, but it's not like the '80s stopped. I guess what I'm trying to say is that the thing is amazing, but so is E.T. But the '80s had both. Like the Terminator also came out around the time of the thing, and it's fucking mean, man. That movie's mean.
Yeah.
So it's not
really
like everybody. It's not like it's Sarah Connor. Yes, why? And he just fucking blows her face off. It's hardcore.
Yeah.
So it's not like it wasn't all Goonies. It's, I don't know. So I'm not sure why the thing didn't. But I mean, it is weird that it didn't, because it's such a masterpiece. It's weird. I blame the critics though, because. Go ahead.
No, it was a summer release. I think it would have been better if it was like an October movie or something like that. Because can you imagine?
Did it come out in the middle of summer?
Yeah, it came out in June, release. Which is an odd time for a movie like that to come out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not really a summer vacation with the kids kind of movie.
Yeah, that's stay away. But let's.
And back then, were the summer releases like they are sort of were they the family fare kind of thing? And then you'd want to release something darker in the fall. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But talking about other directors aside, let's talk about you, man. This interview is about you. You're our exclusive. I know our listeners are probably wondering, they may have not heard of your movie. We did tweet on our social media accounts that we were watching it, and if they watched it, tell us. And we got some feedback from that. But Patrick has a question for you that I know he wants to ask. And he's got a mouthful of peach rings, so I'm going to ask for him. So can you just tell our listeners a little bit about your movie, Trench 11?
Yeah. I should think anybody could, you learn right away that it's basically a World War I set horror thriller. Mm-hmm. And it's set, as mentioned a while ago on this during this conversation, it's set at the very end of World War I, and it definitely uses that kind of men on a mission narrative. So a group of allies led by a drunk Canadian tunneler. They have to infiltrate a German base because at the end of the war, the no man's land opened up so they could move. There was no movement before that, so it's kind of this weird moment. And they infiltrate an underground German base, and they go 100 feet down below, which is what did exist back then historically. It is historically accurate, is what I'm going to say.
Oh wow!
And they go in, and then you have a really kind of a very, like a tight, claustrophobic, paranoid. There's a bioterror. There's an infectious disease, and it's combining body horror kind of narrative with military narrative. So the two sort of coexist. In this tight space for the rest of the movie.
They do definitely coexist very well, and if you're going to go into a trench 100 feet below ground and open a scary door, you're going to have a bad time. It's just, you're guaranteed to have a bad time.
Yeah, it's not a good idea. Yeah,
I mean, if I may, there's three things I really appreciate about the movie that you did. And one, it's establishing characters that you can care about without wasting too much time explaining why you should care.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've got the drunk French tunneler who I loved, and he had a purpose. He had a whole purpose, and there was no fat on explaining why you should care about him. Then you got the uptight British commanders, and then you got the rage and cocaine-fueled Americans.
That was the perfect representation.
Which, I mean, from an American to a Canadian, let me say thank you for the representation you have given us. Just chewing cocaine and ready to blast something open. I loved it. And then you got, I mean, the guy who played the prophet was an amazing actor. I mean, he crushed it. I loved his character so much. I mean,
he's really cool.
I love that so much. But I also
you'll see him again. You'll see him again, like in somebody else's movie. Even if it's not my next film, I think Robert Sadler was his name, and he is going to break out 100%.
Yeah.
He is awesome. He's a really cool actor.
I also love how you use you basically just use the forest and the tunnels as your setting, and it was so super effective and so well done, kind of like a haunted house type situation.
It is totally a haunted house.
I exactly picked up that vibe.
Yeah. And then the use of how big chemical warfare was in World War I.
Yeah.
I kind of guessed that was what it was going to be, but it was so like, well, it's because I already knew that, and it's so well like put into the story that this could be something based on some sort of like crazy German weirdo friggin' biological bullshit that's gonna fucking go down. Like, oh, that's not mustard gas, it's real fucked up virus things, and it's
worms.
It was so great. I loved it personally.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
well, you know what? That whole element of it was really just came out of trying to research the history. So as much as the movie is obviously not, a documentary, we really did try. When I say we, I mean myself and my whole team, and especially my co-writer Matt Boy's his name, and like he had made all these documentaries on World War One, and he actually traveled for a British documentary. He'd gone to the existing underground tunnels in Europe, and so we're always trying to say, like, could this? I mean, I bring up The Exorcist in my top 5 there because to me the coolness of it was like, it's such a crazy idea, but if you take it very seriously, maybe it makes it more scary. So that was the same sort of, that was the thinking, which was just any detail we could put in there, anything to make it more realistic would hopefully, in my mind, make it more scary. And that was even the worms, like they were not just the Germans, also the Allies. 100% of the Allies, as well as the Germans, were experimenting with germ warfare.
Exactly.
They experimented with anthrax, and cholera, and
all kinds of crazy shit.
And with you guys trying to be accurate too, is like, and you also did that with your practical effects as well, like using real practical effects and stuff like that, like not using a lot. Like, did you guys use any CGI at all, or no?
Very little, and my intent was that you wouldn't notice it. I've heard some people say they don't like certain things, and like, yeah, there's a very little amount. I mean, I didn't want to get too caught up with the notion of not using any versus use. I don't know, like it's a weird thing because I prefer practical effects.
Always.
And you guys tell me. I got a question for you.
Oh,
Okay,
whoa,
Why
whoa.
is it though? Okay, no, but why is it? Do you think that there is this desire? Like, I'll give you an example. Like I'm in the same camp as you guys. Like, I love the practical effects, and I always want to see more of them. And like, I remember seeing Jeremy Saulnier's great movie Blue Ruin, and that's what really kind of one of the things that stood out for me was that stuff. But why do you think that is? Like, why? You guys are even younger than me. Like, why the fuck do we? Like, why do we care? Because the truth is, I have 2 daughters, and I showed them Jurassic Park, and it kicks ass, and the CGI kicks ass.
That
and
movie's
it's
ahead
not
of its
like
time.
it's like on. It's no, but it doesn't. It doesn't feel that dated. Oddly enough, it honestly doesn't.
doesn't.
Like it doesn't. But the CGI doesn't look that bad. Like you kind of. So why is it though that we all groove on these practical effects? What do you guys think it is?
I think for at least for Jurassic Park's sake, it's a nice balance of both. So you're not the CGI doesn't look too shitty because
You're right.
You have something to compare it to where it has a practical.
You are right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
when it comes to stuff like that, but when a movie heavily relies on CGI and you could tell, it kind of ruins it and takes you out of the movie and takes you out of the experience. Same thing with the actors.
Why? But why?
I think
Do
the
you think
why-
it looks more fake?
I think it depends because like you get movie, Marvel has, this giant bank account so they can spend all of the money they want to make their computer graphics look amazing. And you can hardly tell sometimes. I mean, you can tell, but it's like you don't care as much. Whereas if you're watching,
but in a horror sense, like for horror movies, we kind of want the practical effects. Like for me, the movie Mama failed on that because of the CGI.
yes, because the CGI character
Sure.
looks
Which film?
Mama.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, the mother of it all, like she's just this giant CGI thing that's floating in the sky, and it looked god awful. But I think the reason we love practical effects is because they're so real. It's tangible. We like in the horror, especially in the horror genre. That's where you're gonna get a lot of them. We want to see people ripped apart and see that blood that was created. Versus, when you watch movies like, even though Krampus was a fun movie, the CGI the gingerbread man with the fake blood, you kind of like, it's comical. It's not really scary. It's not like it's fake. With some movies that use practical effects, to me, that is like sometimes you're like, was that real or was it fake?
Yeah, some things too. Like I feel like the modern generation with like the more like Pixar movies and also video games and stuff, and like just having more access to things that are like CGI as opposed to like back in the day, like your Star Wars and like your Jurassic Park and your Jaws, is they use the more practical effects. And I feel like those will stand the test of time a little bit more than these movies. Not so much that like that's all the studio had back then, but I also feel like now studios were just like, just put it out. I don't care what it looks like. Just get it out there.
It's
And
just making money.
they don't care if people are going to talk about that movie 10 years down the road. They want to make the money now.
Yeah.
So they'll CGI something. They'll CGI the shit out of something and not care.
It's something as simple as blood. Like I hate CGI blood splatter. I think that's, especially if it's super noticeable, because sometimes you can't tell if it's
but sometimes it's not. Like but sometimes it's not. Like I'm quite certain that like in The Departed, there's some CGI blood splatter.
Oh yeah, there is.
It doesn't look, it looks good though. Like you can't really tell. You know what I mean? Like
exactly.
It's an interesting thing. I like, oddly enough, the reason why I asked you guys is like you're all clearly like, you're smart guys who really are dialed in, and I'm asking it because I'm not fully on board with the answer, and I don't really know why. Like, I agree with everything you're saying, except that sometimes when you do look at, and I felt the same way. Like, when I was prepping Trench 11, I was saying to my producers, I'm like, we cannot do CGI. We got to go old school. We got to do this.
Yeah.
But I've seen a lot of practical effects that I love.
Yeah.
But I'm not even sure that they're more real. Like, sometimes I watch them, I'm like, is that more real or is it just groovier? Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, like honestly, like, there was that movie, The Void, which was a Canadian movie. I know the guy.
That movie is fucking amazing.
Right, but like, it's not necessarily more real. It's not like you're looking at the practical effects and saying, oh, that there's something else, and I'm not exactly sure. Like, but I really. all I'm trying to say is I fully agree. I'm just curious. Like, I just don't really know.
I think if you're gonna
I find it really interesting.
I think if you're gonna do one or the other, you just gotta do it well.
Yeah, I
Like,
agree.
Not
Right,
everyone's gonna
right.
be as good as John Carpenter when it comes to doing practical effects, just because the man just 1,000% knows what he's doing. So I guess it depends on who's directing
Right.
it, the vision, and just the overall work ethic on. Are you gonna do a good mix of both to where you're not blowing all your budget on one or the other?
Yeah.
And then that way, the budget you do spend on your CGI, you make sure it looks damn good. Because some people, like I said,
No, I think you just
yeah.
you just hit the nail on the head, because like if you compare it to like Neil Blomkamp,
Yes.
Yeah.
right?
Oh.
And he's right. So District 9,
Yeah.
that CGI is fucking kick ass, and that
Yes,
is not a very expensive movie.
No.
And it's because exactly what you just said. He knew how to do it. He knew he could deliver on it. He knew what he could do and what he couldn't do. And you're right. You just commit one way or another, but just do it fucking well.
Are
You're
you
not
sad?
gonna do it well.
Are you sad we're not?
I think maybe that's what it is. And maybe that's what it is, that most CGI just ends up getting done a bit sloppy because, I don't know, filmmakers don't really know how to do it, maybe? I don't know.
Maybe.
You did just...
I also believe it's because of a lot of people in the same kitchen too, because like a lot of studios get a lot of people to work on the CGI stuff, and it kind of loses its look when there's hundreds of people putting their touch on it.
The touch on it, yeah.
Or I honestly feel that, like, you know, they what's it called? Like, they had this vision and they just ran out of money and just couldn't finish the final product that they were like looking for.
I mean, yeah. I mean, there's probably so
Right.
many factors that play into it, and I think another big reason for the horror, genre of movies is because we grew up. Our movies were growing up. It was practical effects.
Yeah.
The Twilight Zone was using practical effects. The Universal Monsters were using practical effects. The golden age of horror up to the Silver Age, up to the modern and mid 20th century to early 20th century with German expressionism. We grew up with our movies using these practical sets, these practical effects. So I think when it comes to the horror genre of movies, we just prefer them because that's what we've always had. And when we get this CGI,
Maybe you're right. That's a really good point. Yeah.
It's
We're sci-fi, you're more accepting of the CGI
Exactly.
because it's a newer phenomenon. Yeah.
exactly.
Well, it's like one of the very first couple of horror movies I remember watching as a kid was Alien, Jaws, and Pumpkinhead.
Yeah.
And those are like, it's real,
odd
three
odd
really
three
weird
movies.
movies, right? Alien, mega blockbuster. Jaws,
What-
mega
what year-
blockbuster.
what year
Pumpkinhead,
did-
also a mega blockbuster in my mind. But I mean, all big.
What year is Pumpkinhead?
oh God, hold on.
90.
Let me,
it couldn't have been 90s. It had to definitely like
70.
late 70s or 80s. Because my mom showed me that movie. 'cause
88.
Yeah. And I was born 89.
Love it.
Yeah, so like, yeah.
Love it.
That was one of the first movies I saw, and that was a very big practical effect movie. Very big.
Yeah, I just think it comes from just us watching those movies and knowing that it was done better way back in the day than movies nowadays.
we demanded.
I don't want to be that guy that's like, back in my day.
Yeah,
but
But
here I am.
Hold on to these fucking suspenders.
Yeah.
But back in my day.
Yeah, damn.
But when it
kids.
comes to horror movies, it's kind of like what we expect, and especially if it's a gory movie, like we want practical effects, we
Yeah.
want the makeup, because then we get
No, you're right. You know
Yeah.
what? You're right. You're right. That's, and I think that part of that also, I've really noticed this. Like, we're September right now, and
Yeah.
last year was when I was in Germany, in Berlin, for the first showing of Trench.
Mhm.
So I ran the circuit at a lot of horror festivals, and I got to say, like, that's the other thing I really realized was just how knowledgeable and passionate, and in some ways, like, romantic is like a weird word to use, but respectful of their history, of the lineage. Like horror fans and horror film as a community is very knowledgeable about the lineage of the movies.
Yes.
And like you said, going back to the F.W. Murnau and the Nosferatu and all the stuff,
Yes.
right? Like, people know much more so than people who are fans of, like, cool dramas.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I think you're probably right. I think you're right. I think that there is something to do with that, which is knowing. Yes, it's that you've always seen it that way.
Yeah.
Suddenly to change it,
We don't like
There's got to be
change,
some
damn
good
it.
horror movies. No, but there's got to be some good horror movies that have changed it. There has to be some.
Oh, yeah, there's definitely some.
I mean, I can't.
There's definitely some that have used the CGI and it's been phenomenal.
I think movies that are bringing back old era style of movies like The Black Coat's Daughter, The Witch, those kind of movies are like, I think certain directors are starting to like, even I can even throw Trench 11 in there, like are starting to try to bring back, usher in the cinema magic 80s era of times where it was like you had to make a movie.
Yep.
You don't do a movie, you make it. Like you do like it's so much more in depth now. People are wanting to go back to the older ways. It's almost like with music and vinyl.
Yeah.
People want their music on vinyl.
Yeah, that's true.
Because just something about it. And that's the same thing with practical effects. It's just people want their movies to stand the test of time years and years down the road, especially for when they have kids as well. Because it's like I have two nephews, one's 4 and one's 2, and I'm counting the days so I can show them Alien.
Yes.
And
Show them now.
No, dude, no, I can't. He saw a little bit of the new It, and he won't go near drains. He won't do it.
That's a
And
smart boy.
I think that's mostly it.
Pretty violent.
Yeah.
I think that's mostly it's just like us as horror fans are just missing the movie magic.
Yeah, definitely.
Me, even as a movie fan, like I'm just missing like the how we made this movie, stuff like that, and like behind the scenes stuff.
But like speaking about the horror genre, typically when you think about horror movies, there's not really a lot of war movies in the world. You have Frankenstein's Army.
Yeah.
You have Trench 11. You have what's another one?
Overlord's coming out.
You got Overlord coming out.
Overlord is the big one coming out.
Which I have a feeling I'm going to be watching Overlord going, Trench 11 did it better. I can just see it.
Yeah.
I can just see it because I've actually read a couple of reviews on about Overlord, and a lot of people are like, it's good, but then meh. So I'm like, I don't know what to expect, but I feel like two different war eras, different things.
Yeah.
But I think it's definitely a really neat premise to take.
But like speaking about that, like with like war movies being such a small part of the horror community, it was really like watching Trench 11. I'm sure this was same around the table. It was really rejuvenating to get like this story, and in its originality in itself, because it's different. We don't get these types of horror movies, so. I really enjoyed that, and I applaud you for giving us that story. But do you think like horror and war go together well, like when it comes to movies?
I totally do. I mean, I appreciate the kind words. I mean, I honestly, I can only speak from my own personal take on things, but I know some people out there in the world don't really know why you would make a horror movie of war, because their argument is that war is already, horrific enough.
Right? Yeah.
Whereas I really don't get that. I really, really don't. And I would extend the references to, I would consider personally, a movie like Apocalypse Now, I think is almost like a horror movie. Yeah. So as much as it's not, like there's no overtly, there's nothing to make it a horror, but if you look at it tonally, it's very much a war is hell approach. Like it is a surreal, hellish, dark place. It is not a place for generals and heroes to be, defending their national bravado, and which is what historically war films have been.
Yeah.
It's much more of a kind of position that war is an absolutely absurdly horrific thing, period. And so I'm just using that as a personal example, personal influence. But I don't know. I look at war and I'm like, that it is war. I don't know. Once you get past. I mean, look, every war is a bit different. I don't want to oversimplify or overgeneralize. And I mean, just as a like if you take World War II, okay? Mm-hmm. If you're a Brit or if you're American or Canadian or French or whatever in World War II, and the fucking Nazis are like, in England's case, it's like, hey, we're going to invade you. It's like, fuck you, we're going to war with you.
Yeah.
And so you get it. You're like, well, that's a war movie. It's like, go fuck off. We're gonna
Yeah.
go fight your fucking ass and
Yeah.
fuck you.
Exactly.
But most wars, including World War One, which is what Trench 11 is, most other wars, I don't want to get all political here, but I kind of include Vietnam in a weird way into World War One. It's like most wars, were they really necessary? Did you really have to get to a place where you were like literally just everybody is, killing everybody? The whole place, you've turned Earth into hell, and I'm surprised that there aren't more, because I actually think, and you know what? I think there will be more. I think that part of the reason why there haven't been more is because there's maybe possibly been an idea that it's slightly disrespectful, I think, maybe to wars. I'm not sure.
I can see
I don't know. I don't know. I wonder that, right? But to me, it's not, like, creatively and artistically, it is a natural setting and extension of it, because
exactly. And
horror is always about, like, what's worse? Like, what could be worse? And honestly, being,
like,
in this specific case, like, you have an infectious disease that will kill you, and you're surrounded by people who, if they're with the infection, will kill you, and if they're not with the infection, they'll kill you.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, it's like that to me is hell. Like, it's like, I don't know what's scarier. So, but
yeah,
exactly.
So I'm very pro it, and I think it's a very interesting area to explore. There was a really amazing short film, a French short film that was licensed by Rod Serling. I think it played possibly as the final Twilight Zone for, not ever, I want to say ever, but I don't know if that makes any sense. But it was definitely like way late in the Twilight Zone's broadcast run. I know it was the season finale of one season, and I believe possibly because they ran out of money. But this movie, I'm going to look it up before I flake out too much here on the cast here. So I'll make sure I'll look it up and continue talking. But it was it's called an occurrence, something like an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge or something like that. But it was based on actually an American short story, and written, and it's a Civil War setting.
Oh wow!
And it's called An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, and it's written by an American writer named Ambrose Bierce, and he wrote it in, like, I don't know what he wrote. He wrote it in 1890.
Whoa.
And it's a Civil War setting, and this Frenchman made it in the 60s. He remade it as a short film, and it won a Cannes that year. And Rod Serling was so impressed that he just paid for the short film to just be an episode of The Twilight Zone. And it was one of, like, the most important episodes of The Twilight Zone. And it's like a very long-winded version of saying, what's so fascinating about that story, though, is that it is basically Civil War, and it's basically horror, because it's all about him being hung. And there's this kind of, like, twisted, I don't want to reveal the twist there. So,
Right.
But it's very, like, and so it's not a new thing. It's been around. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely in the video game world.
It's exactly, and it's been around way before that. And so, and the video game world, 100% it has, and with good reason. Like, I fully get it. Like, I remember the first time I was aware of, what's the World War II Wolfenstein Castle?
Wolfenstein.
What is that called?
Wolfenstein's a fantastic game.
This is fucking. Pardon me? That's the game, right?
Wolfenstein is the game. It was on Xbox back in the day, and I mean they have new ones now, but the original ones were crazy.
Wasn't Roger Avery supposed to make a version of that one day? I remember hearing that years ago.
I think so.
Did you hear about that?
I don't think it got greenlit. I think it got shot down. But yeah, someone was trying to do something with the Wolfenstein storyline.
I think if someone was to bring up the question, like, could you do horror, like a war movie in horror, or like could you make like that? I think that you have to ask the question: is the war going to be your story, or is it going to be your setting? Because I think that war and horror can exist in those two ways. For example, Trench 11, war is your setting.
Yeah.
The war is your setting, but
Correct.
the story is biological
It's a horror
worms
story.
that control the
Yeah,
frontal
yeah.
lobe and make people go insane.
Yeah.
But then you got your
It's
movie.
Cronenberg
yeah.
meets The Thing.
Right,
Yeah.
and then you got,
Yeah.
but then you got is Warrior Story, and if I could think of the most horrifying war movie I think I've ever seen was Johnny Got His Gun from 1971, which is basically the inspiration for Metallica's One, which is basically a guy who was hit by an artillery shell, and he lost his legs, his arms, and his eyes. So he was basically a prisoner in his own body, and he figured out how to communicate via Morse code. But once he figured out that he wasn't going to ever be what he was, he basically was left in a room to just say, "Help me, SOS," and Morse code for the rest of his life. And that is scary as fuck, terrifying. So I think if someone's going to ask,
is that what Metallica?
Yeah.
If
you watch the music video, the end of the video is him going SOS, SOS, help me. Like with no arms, no legs, and no eyes. So I think you got to ask yourself, yes, you can do a horror movie based in war, but is the war going to be your story, or is it going to be your setting?
Yeah.
That's a really good point, Dylan.
That's a really good point, and that's also a really good example. Like, to me, Metallica is a perfect, like, they have actually, and I think Iron Maiden and other metal bands have already referenced that war horror kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is that that's a post-Vietnam take on war, where it's not all propaganda and it's not all, like bravado and nationalism. It's like, well, hold up, like it's fucking horrible what's happening,
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. But I think it's only a matter of time. More people will do it. I mean, look, there was a time when, prior to 2001, A Space Odyssey, this Stanley Kubrick movie, that sci-fi was considered a lesser genre.
Oh yeah.
And it wasn't considered, right? And
that's not the case
it's
anymore.
only a matter of time. Well, obviously not, right?
Yeah.
So then that movie comes out, and then everyone at first shits on it, of course, and then they're like, well, wait a second, maybe it's good. Could it be art? Oh, actually, it is art. And now sci-fi, obviously, is like a very, like, it is what it is. And even, I think even a movie like Alien or The Thing, it's still the idea that anybody really wanted to fully embrace these movies. They're monster movies, right?
Yeah.
And monster movies were supposed to be for B movies. They're supposed to be for teens and, for making out and whatever. Like, they're not supposed to be high art.
Yeah.
So I do think to some degree, I'm not trying to say this, certainly not about my own film, Transylvania, but there is, and I have heard this a lot doing the circuit now. And there is a weird thing with the war horror thing where, like, there's a lot of people that think it shouldn't be done, and I very much disagree. I think it's an artistic expression.
No, there's so much story.
And I think it's very intuitive. I think that comment was very accurate, which is you do have to know whether it's your setting or your narrative. I think that's really true. But I do think that there'll be more. I do. And then a Kubrick or somebody, some new, kid out there will make a film that then suddenly everyone will say, oh yeah, that's a great genre. Like that's.
It will happen one day. I mean, Trench 11 is definitely putting its foot out there, and I mean, I've been telling everyone I know to watch it. I have a lot of friends. Actually, we have 2 friends up in Canada that run a podcast, and I've been talking to them like, you guys need to watch this movie. It's freaking fantastic. And they watched it. I think one of them watched it the other day, and they were just like, dude, wow. Like, this was crazy.
Wicked.
I loved it.
Where are they? Where are they based?
They are in Toronto.
Nice one.
Yeah, I think that's where Lou.
Yeah, Lou.
I know Patrick lives in Toronto. I don't know if Lou lives in Toronto or if he lives outside Toronto. I can't remember where they live. But.
Answer our questions, Pat.
Same thing.
Yes. Same thing. It's Canada.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, I guess
we're all Leaf fans.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You mentioned Cronenberg, and we know that you've actually got to work underneath Cronenberg. How was that? Like, can you kind of like go into working under? I mean, someone as Cronenberg, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was. I mean, honestly, when I look back on it, it's just a piece of good fortune because I was a young guy out of school and I was PAing, and Toronto is a pretty big production center for both Canadian but mostly for American projects up here because of the dollar and the budgets and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I was fortunate enough at the time that I was trying to really just trying to get going and work and just have a job. And I was what's called a training AD here. I think in the States that you're basically a PA in the States, and then you can become like a second. I think it was just a trainee, a DGA trainee. But I was the equivalent of that here.
Okay.
And I happened to be fortunate enough to get in with a group of an assistant directing team led by a guy named Walter Gasparovic, who, I worked on a couple really shitty MOWs with him, and we got along. We worked really well together. And then he was doing those shitty MOWs in between doing really good movies, and in my case, I was just new.
Yeah.
And then he landed David's movie Existence, and I got a call saying, "Do you want to come and work on it?" And of course I did. So I tried to make the most. Yeah, and I just tried to make the most of it because I'm a huge David Cronenberg fan for two reasons. One is I just think that as a horror fan, everything from Scanners and Rabid and The Fly. I mean, some of his modern later stuff his crime stuff has been like incredible. But really, like when you look those late 70s, early 80s period for horror with Cronenberg, the guy was on fire.
Yeah, he could do no wrong.
No, he was on fire. So I was totally, juiced into that. So I was, but also doubled up on that, the fact that I was a Canadian. Just as a Canadian, I think you're just, he's it's a smaller country and we have fewer role models and fewer idols. And I think that, it's hard to kind of express that, but like he's so much bigger here, in perspective to what, like there's not that many role models, so to him he's just larger than life. So I sucked it. I made it work, and I learned everything I could from him, and I became friends with him. And he's a very honest person. He's very kind, generous guy, but he's also very honest, which I think is really good.
Yeah.
And like I showed him my first early work back then, and he was very, very quick to tell me what was not good about it.
I mean, that's the best kind of criticism,
pretty
honestly.
Painful, but yeah, exactly. It was like at the time, I'm like, that fucking guy, what the fuck, and then like within a couple hours, you're like, oh shit, and I certainly, when I look back now, I'm like, well, of course, that's what you want, if you really want to help somebody, you just,
you gotta
try and be
be blunt with
positive,
them.
be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So, and he's very much like that. So the biggest thing for me was more just that, and I've stayed in touch with him, and he's remained a mentor, and he actually offered up some really productive notes on an earlier draft of Trench 11.
Oh, yeah. Awesome!
And he had some really positive, just conversations with me in terms of like just stuff to think about, and as a director, and how to approach the material and all that kind of stuff. But when I look back, I think the most important thing was just humanizing the guy and just seeing, he's just a dude and he's doing his thing, and
exactly,
and like all that kind of stuff. Like you just, I think that's important because I think it's easy to just. I think I remember it's Roberto Benigni, is that who did the shit Life is Beautiful? Is that it? The Holocaust clown movie?
Oh yeah.
He's an Italian filmmaker. He's kind of not big right now, right? But he was. Like, I mean, he was huge. But I remember he I think it was him that he said the first time he came to Toronto was like, I think on the press junket for Life is Beautiful, probably for Tim. And he'd never been to Toronto. And I think it was him who said that, like, he was at Pearson Airport and he was terrified of what the city was going to be for him. And it was because he was a huge Cronenberg fan. Right. And all he knew about Toronto was what David had created. You know what I mean? And David had created this insanely fucked up, crazy, scary world. So, and I kind of always remembered that because I remember when I heard that and I was like, I could see, that's how I felt about David until I got to work with him, And so just seeing him do his thing, it helped. It helped us, all those things help.
Yeah.
It helps.
That's so cool. I mean, the work underneath someone as Cronenberg, that's pretty fucking awesome. I mean, that's a great mentor to have. His movies are awesome. I watch them quite often. I'm a big Cronenberg fan. But that, like I said, that's just an awesome, lucky experience to really get that call and just get to work underneath someone. But I mean, man, we kind of went through all our questions.
Yeah.
This has been a fun time. Well, like I said, man,
I'm glad we did. I'm glad. I have to tell you guys, honestly, though, I've listened to other podcasts. I love what you guys do, but I was glad that I was able to throw it at you because I kind of collectively between all of you, I think I have a better handle on the practical effects conversation.
Yeah.
Just listening to
yeah,
it's an ongoing thing, and I find it quite fascinating, to be honest. And I really actually think that you guys are some really, like, you're bang on a lot of what you're saying.
We appreciate that, man.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
We
much.
do me and Patrick, we do a panel at a horror convention, and we actually talk about horror movies from back then to now, and practical effects is a really big topic because we have a really diverse audience from like older to new, and we research a lot of this stuff and read about like how practical effects.
Yeah.
So we try to read as much as we can, so we're quite knowledgeable on things. But man, we appreciate it. We're stoked that you enjoy our show. That's weird.
I fucking dig it, man. You guys don't stop what you're doing. So you guys are
Thank you.
Giants fans or Jets or what are you?
Uh-oh.
Oh God, sports!
Oh no.
No, sports ball.
No, here's the thing. I'm in a podcast full of nerds except for George.
Yeah, it's half and half. Two of us are really big
Yeah,
sports fans.
I try
and
to
the
talk
other
about
ones are too
about
nerdy.
football on this podcast, and they won't let me. But no, I'm a Jacksonville Jaguars fan.
And I'm a Bears fan.
Oh, the Bears. Nice.
Hey,
The Bears.
Wait,
we're doing good this year, better than we've done in like
do
5-6 years.
you like
so-
football? Are you a football fan by chance?
What's that?
Are you a football fan by chance?
No. I wish I was. I'm a frustrated Canadian. I wish we had our own team. If we did, I'm a rabid hockey like a
Oh,
guy.
Okay,
And,
yeah.
Yes, Tampa
but
actually has a really good
but
hockey
I am
team.
an NFL. Do you know what movie really fucked me up though? I have to say, just as a sports fan, and made me question why
Uh-oh.
was what's his name? The guy who wrote for The Onion, and he co-wrote. He did a Darren Aronofsky movie. There's that giant with Patton Oswalt, and he's like a giant.
Oh,
fan.
that movie's
It's so
crazy.
fucked up.
That movie is crazy.
It's fucking crazy.
It's insane.
What's it called?
Yeah.
Fan? Big fan?
I think this is called like Fan or like what is it called? Mike, he's gonna look it up on the.
Coach Carter.
No, it's not.
It's so honestly, it's so fucked up because
And it's Big Fan. Yeah, it's called
I
Big
don't know.
Fan. And like
big fan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, there could be.
It's terrifying because I've seen myself be there, and I'm like, oh man, that movie is like the darkest. Like it's as dark as the Channing Tatum wrestling fucking
Throwdown.
whatever the fuck that one was.
Foxcatcher.
Oh yeah.
Foxcatcher.
Foxcatcher was nuts.
Don't bring up wrestling. We'll be here for 2 hours.
Oh yeah, now
Oh, yeah, we will.
listen, man, I'm an American, goddammit. Wrestling and football, buddy. You're about to open up the box. No, listen. If you want to watch football, I'll give you a Reddit link, and you can, and it's one channel, and you can watch all the football you want. I got your back. Trust me. We will make a.
do things here.
I will send you a Jaguars jersey. We will hook you up.
We'll make you a true football fan.
You'll be in a fantasy football league by the time you know it, buddy.
Well, I'm glad I asked.
Yes.
No, you're not. You
All
won't
right,
be.
well, guys,
You
well,
wait.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much, Leo.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time, and
Yeah.
we look forward
And-
to seeing any future products that you may be working on.
Oh, I'll get another one going, and I'll get back on there. We can talk about something else. And I'm very thankful that I ended up on the Carpenter month. I think that's
Yes.
Yes.
big up the man. He is the king. He's the king.
He's got some movies. That's
For
for sure.
sure, yeah.
You got the good, the bad, and
Yeah.
the ugly.
He's got
They're
some
good.
movies under him.
Just help me meet
Yeah.
Willem Dafoe. That's all I want.
Yeah, you let us meet Willem Dafoe, I'll get you a football
Listen,
jersey. That's a fair trade.
Fucking A.
Well, we'll keep in touch on that Pete
Deal.
and Tom remake.
Yeah.
Yeah, Peep and Tom remake, please.
Yes.
All right, Leo. Well, thank you
Deal.
again for joining our show, and have a
All
good
right.
night, man.
All right, thanks, dude. Take care, man.
Bye.
Be well.